Lavra Mitchell pushed through the heavy wooden doors of Rising Sun Martial Arts Academy, her worn sneakers scuffing softly against the polished bamboo floor. The familiar scent of sweat and pine cleaner filled the air, mingling with the rhythmic thuds of fists meeting pads and the sharp exhales of students practicing their forms. At 40, Laura carried herself with a quiet grace, her faded hoodie and loose jeans doing little to draw attention. Her graying brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her face, free of makeup, bore the soft lines of a life spent prioritizing others over herself. She scanned the dojo for her 16-year-old daughter, Emma, who was finishing a sparring drill on the blue mats across the room. Emma's ponytail bounced as she threw a precise kick, her face alight with the confidence she'd gained since joining the academy a year ago. Laura's heart swelled with warmth. Every late shift she worked as a graphic designer to pay for these lessons was worth it to see Emma stand taller, her shy smile replaced by determination. "Mom's here," Emma called, waving with a grin before turning back to her partner. Lavra settled onto a bench near the viewing area, pulling out her phone to answer a client's email about a logo design. Around her, parents chatted in low tones, their eyes flicking toward the center of the dojo, where Daniel Harper, the head instructor, led an advanced class. His black belt gleamed against his crisp white GI, and his voice boomed with authority, cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Focus, Carter. Your stance is sloppier than a toddler's." He snapped at a sweating teenager, his tone sharp enough to make the boy flinch. A few students chuckled nervously, their respect for Daniel tinged with fear. Lavra glanced up, her hazel eyes narrowing slightly as she watched him correct another student with a forceful shove to the shoulder. His technique was solid, clean lines, controlled power, but his arrogance grated on her. She'd seen men like him before, skilled enough to command a room but too proud to notice the cost of their words. Sensei Daniel's intense, whispered. A mother nearby, her tone a mix of awe and ease. Lavra returned to her phone, but her instincts stayed alert, honed by years she'd buried deep. Emma jogged over, her face flushed with exertion, her water bottle dangling from one hand. "Ready, Mom?" "I just need to grab my bag." Lavra smiled, tucking her phone away. "Take your time, sweetheart. How was class?" Emma's eyes sparkled. "Amazing. Sensei Daniel showed us a new spinning kick. He says I'm close to testing for my blue belt." Pride surged in Laura's chest. Emma had been a quiet kid, struggling with self-doubt, and martial arts had given her a spark Laura hadn't seen since she was small. As they gathered Emma's gear, Daniel's voice rang out again, this time with a playful edge that made Laura's stomach tighten. "All right, everyone, who's up for a little fun before we wrap up?" The room quieted, all eyes turning to the instructor. Laura felt the shift in the air, a prickle of unease that told her something was coming, something that would test the quiet life she'd built for herself and her daughter. Daniel Harper's voice sliced through the dojo's hum. The advanced class had just finished their drills. His eyes scanned the room, gleaming with a confidence that bordered on menace, and landed on Laura, still seated on the bench. "You know what, folks?" he said, striding across the mats with a swagger that drew every gaze. "Let's have a real lesson today, show you what happens when an ordinary person thinks they can keep up with a trained fighter." Emma froze beside her. "Mother," her knuckles whitening around her water bottle. "Mom, let's go," she whispered, her voice tight with worry. Laura's hazel eyes flicked up, meeting Daniel's gaze as he stopped a few feet away, his 6'2" frame towering over her modest 5'5" stature. The dojo fell silent, the students' chatter replaced by an uneasy hush, as if they sensed the line was about to be crossed. Daniel's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're Emma's mom, right? Lavra, is it?" he asked, his voice loud enough to carry to every corner of the room. Lavra nodded. "That's right. Daniel's smile widened, sensing an easy target. Ever thought about stepping onto the mats yourself? Maybe you've watched Emma and wondered what it's like to throw a real punch. A few students snickered, their loyalty to their instructor overriding their discomfort. Lavra felt Emma's hand brush hers, clammy with nerves. Not really, Lavra replied evenly, her voice soft but steady. We should get going. Emma has schoolwork. Daniel wasn't deterred. He clapped his hands, the sharp sound making a younger student jump. Oh, come on now, don't be shy. Let's give the class a quick demo, nothing serious. Just a friendly spar to show why training matters. The word friendly hung in the air like a lie, and Laura's stomach tightened. Not from fear, but from the weight of a past she'd locked away. Emma tugged at her sleeve, her voice barely audible. Mom, you don't have to do this. He's just showing off. Lavra squeezed her daughter's hand, her touch gentle but firm. It's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes people need to learn the hard way. The other parents murmured, some leaning forward, drawn by the drama, others looking away, uncomfortable with Daniel's bullying tone. Daniel, oblivious to the growing unease, gestured to the center of the mat with a flourish. Come on, Laura. Let's make it educational. Show these kids what happens when you don't have real skills. Lavra felt a familiar coldness settle in her chest, not anger, but the clarity of someone who'd faced bigger challenges than an overconfident instructor. She stood slowly, slipping off her hoodie to reveal a plain t-shirt that hid the lean strength of her arms. The room's tension crackled as she stepped onto the mat, her sneakers silent against the padded surface. Daniel laughed, adjusting his black belt with a theatrical tug. Don't worry, I'll go easy. Wouldn't want to send you home with a story you can't tell at the PTA. A few students chuckled, but others exchanged worried looks, sensing the shift in Laura's posture, a subtle straightening of her spine, a slight bend in her knees. Emma stood frozen at the mat's edge, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and trust in her mother. Sensei Daniel, maybe this isn't a good idea, a teenage student ventured, but Daniel waved him off. Relax, kid. This is how we learn, by seeing the difference between real fighters and wannabes. Laura's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her voice remained calm. One condition, Daniel. When this is over, you apologize to your students for turning their training into a spectacle. The room inhaled collectively, stunned by her quiet defiance. Daniel's laughter echoed, sharp and dismissive. Apologize? Lady, you'll be the one apologizing when you're picking yourself up off the mat. He turned to his students, spreading his arms wide. Watch closely, everyone. This is what happens when you overestimate yourself. Lavra said nothing, her gaze steady as she positioned herself at the mat center, her breathing slow and deliberate. The students formed a loose circle, their excitement tinged with unease, while the parents watched in silence, some clutching their bags as if ready to flee. Lavra Mitchell stood centered on the dojo's blue mats, her stillness a stark contrast to the restless energy radiating from Daniel Harper as he circled her, his black belt glinting under the fluorescent lights. The air in Rising Sun Martial Arts Academy felt thick with anticipation, the students and parents watching in hushed silence, sensing a shift they couldn't yet name. Laura's plain t-shirt and jeans masked the strength in her lean frame, but her posture, feet evenly spaced, shoulders relaxed, hinted at a depth no one expected. Daniel, oblivious, cracked his knuckles and grinned. Ready to learn, Lavra? He taunted, bouncing lightly on his toes. Emma stood at the mat's edge, her heart pounding, her eyes locked on her mother, who gave her a small, reassuring nod before focusing on Daniel. The dojo's quiet was broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional shuffle of a student's foot. Laura's mind drifted back, unbidden, to a life she'd buried 13 years ago. She was Lavra. Kim then, known as the Shadow Blade, a name whispered in awe at tournaments across the country. At 22, she'd won her first national title in mixed martial arts. Her speed and precision unmatched, her calm demeanor earning her the nickname for how she struck without warning. By 27, she'd claimed 3 championships, her fights legendary for their elegance and power. But the memory of her last match was a wound that never healed. Her best friend Sarah had been her sparring partner and biggest supporter. That night, Sarah had stayed late to help Laura prepare, pushing her to perfect a new counter. Exhausted, Sarah drove home in a storm and lost control on a slick road. The call came at 3 a.m. Sarah was gone, and Laura's world shattered. Blaming herself, Laura retired, changed her name to her mother's maiden name, and moved to this quiet town to raise Emma, vowing never to step into a ring again. Now, standing opposite Daniel's smug grin, Laura felt the past stir, not as a call to glory, but as a reminder of the discipline that had shaped her. She exhaled slowly, her breath steady, grounding her in the present. Daniel launched forward with a sharp jab, his fist cutting through the air with practiced force. Laura moved a subtle tilt of her head, a half step to the side, and a punch missed by inches, her evasion so smooth it looked effortless. The students gasped softly, their eyes darting between Daniel's confusion and Laura's calm. He tried again, a quick combination of punches, each one technically sound but predictable to Laura's trained eye. Daniel's brow furrowed, his confidence fraying as he realized his attacks weren't connecting. "What's this, dancing lessons?" He scoffed, masking his unease with a laugh. Laura said nothing, her silence unnerving, her hazel eyes tracking his every move. The crowd's murmurs grew. Students whispered to each other, sensing something extraordinary. A teenage girl near Emma muttered, "She's not even trying." Laura's movements were a masterclass in economy, each dodge precise, her balance unbroken. She wasn't fighting to win. She was teaching, showing Daniel and the room what true control looked like. That trust guided her now, her body remembering every drill, every spar, every moment of pain and triumph. Daniel, growing desperate, threw a high roundhouse kick, aiming for Laura's shoulder. She ducked under it. The parents leaned forward, their unease replaced by fascination. One father whispered, "She's making him look like a beginner." Daniel's face reddened, sweat beading on his forehead as he reset his stance, his breaths coming faster. Laura remained centered, her expression unreadable, her body poised like a coiled spring. The dojo felt electric, every eye locked on the mat, waiting for what came next. Laura's heart ached not for the fight but for Emma, who deserved a Pajur mother who could protect her without reopening old wounds. Yet here, in this moment, she knew she couldn't walk away. Not when Daniel's arrogance threatened the respect she'd taught Emma to value. She met his gaze, her eyes steady, and, for the first time, Daniel hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. Daniel Harper's breaths came in sharp huffs as he faced Laura Mitchell on the dojo's blue mats, his earlier swagger crumbling under the weight of her effortless evasions. The Rising Sun Martial Arts Academy was a pressure cooker of tension. The students and parents riveted, their whispers silenced by the unfolding spectacle. Laura stood motionless, her hazel eyes locked on Daniel, her body radiating a quiet authority that made the air feel charged. Daniel's frustration boiled over, his face flushed with exertion and embarrassment as he realized his polished techniques were useless against her. He circled again, his black belt no longer a symbol of dominance, but a reminder of his miscalculation. "Come on, fight back." He snapped, his voice cracking with desperation. Laura's expression remained serene, but her mind was razor-sharp, calculating every twitch of his shoulders, every shift of his weight. She wasn't here to humiliate him. She was here to protect Emma's pride and teach a lesson about respect. But Daniel's relentless aggression left her no choice. He lunged with a flurry of punches, each one faster and more reckless than the last, his form fraying as his ego took over. Laura moved like a shadow, sidestepping and weaving, her dodges so precise they seemed choreographed, leaving Daniel's fists slicing through empty air. The students leaned closer, their eyes wide with disbelief. A teenage boy muttered, "She's not even breaking a sweat." Emma stood at the mat's edge, her hands clasped tightly, her awe for her mother battling the knot of worry in her chest. Laura's mind flickered to a memory of Sarah, her friend's voice echoing from years past. "You don't need to hit hard, Laura. Just hit smart." That wisdom guided her now, her body responding with the muscle memory of countless hours spent perfecting her craft. Daniel, panting, switched tactics, dropping low for a double-leg takedown, banking on his wrestling experience and size to overpower her. It was a bold move, but against Laura, it was a mistake. She didn't resist or pull back. Instead, she stepped into his charge, her movements fluid and deliberate. As Daniel's arms reached for her legs, Laura's hands found his shoulders, redirecting his momentum with a gentle but unyielding push. Using his own force against him, she guided him downward, her foot sweeping lightly to unbalance him. Daniel crashed onto the mat with a resounding thud, the sound echoing like a thunderclap in the silent dojo. Gasps rippled through the crowd, parents clutching their bags, students frozen in shock. Daniel lay there for a heartbeat, stunned, his cheek pressed against the cool mat, his mind grappling with the impossibility of what had just happened. Laura stepped back, her breathing even, her stance relaxed but ready. She extended a hand to help him up, her gesture devoid of malice, but Daniel ignored it, scrambling to his feet, his face burning with humiliation. What was that? He demanded, his voice hoarse, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an explanation among his students' stunned faces. Laura's voice was soft but clear, cutting through the tension. "It's not about strength, Daniel. It's about control." The words hung in the air, profound in their simplicity, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Emma's eyes glistened, her fear replaced by a fierce pride as she watched her mother stand tall, untouched and unshaken. The parents exchanged glances, their discomfort giving way to respect. One mother whispered, "She's incredible." Daniel, his chest heaving, tried to regain his footing, both physically and mentally. He threw a wild haymaker, a desperate bid to reclaim his authority, but Laura ducked under it with ease, her body swaying like a reed in the wind. As he stumbled past, she tapped his ribs lightly, a touch so gentle it couldn't hurt, but its message was unmistakable. "I could end this, but I'm choosing not to." Daniel spun around, his eyes wild with frustration, but also with a dawning realization that he was outmatched. "Fight me properly," he shouted, his voice echoing with a mix of anger and panic. Laura met his gaze, question, her tone steady. "I am fighting." "Daniel, I'm just not fighting the way you expected." A teenage girl near the front whispered, "She's teaching him without hitting him." Laura's restraint was a masterclass in discipline, her every move a lesson in humility, and the room felt it. Daniel's shoulders slumped slightly, his bravado cracking as he faced the reality of his misjudgment. Laura stood poised, her silence louder than any taunt, her presence a reminder that true strength needed no display. The rising sun marshal Arts Academy was a frozen tableau, his pride scattered across the blue mats where Laura Mitchell stood, her calm presence commanding the room without a single raised voice. Daniel staggered to his feet, his black belt askew, his face a storm of confusion and wounded ego as he stared at Laura, who remained centered, her hazel eyes steady with a quiet intensity that unnerved him. The students and parents watched in stunned silence, their earlier excitement replaced by a reverent hush, as if they'd witnessed something sacred. Emma stood at the mat's edge, her hands no longer clenched, her eyes shining with tears of pride and relief as she looked at her mother, who had just dismantled Daniel's arrogance with a single graceful throw. Daniel's chest heaved, his breaths ragged, as he tried to process the impossible. A suburban mom had outmaneuvered him, a black belt with years of teaching under his belt. How? He rasped, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes searching Laura's face for answers. Laura's expression softened, but her voice carried the weight of her past. 13 years of training, Daniel, before I ever walked into this dojo. I chose to walk away from it, but the lessons stay with you. The words landed like a gentle rebuke, and the room stirred as Emma stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. My mom was Laura Kim, 3-time national champion. She retired when I was little to raise me. The revelation hit like a shockwave. Students gasping, parents leaning forward, some pulling out their phones to search the name. Whispers spread as they found grainy videos of Laura Kim, the Shadow Blade, dominating opponents with a precision that matched the woman before them. Daniel's face cycled through emotion, shock, embarrassment, and a flicker of something new, perhaps respect. He looked at his students, their eyes wide with awe, then back at Laura, who stood with the same unassuming grace she'd carried when she entered. I didn't know, he muttered, his voice cracking under the weight of his mistake. Laura nodded, her tone gentle but firm. You didn't ask, Daniel. You assumed. The strongest people don't need to prove themselves. They choose when to show it. The words resonated, and a teenage student near the back nodded slowly, as if committing them to memory. Emma moved closer to her mother, her hand brushing Laura's arm, a silent thank you for defending her dignity. The parents, once torn between discomfort and curiosity, now watched with admiration. One father murmuring, "She's teaching us all something today." Daniel's shoulders slumped, his bravado gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability that made him seem younger, almost fragile. He turned to his students, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier bluster. I owe you all an apology. I let my ego turn this into a spectacle, and that's not what a teacher does. Mrs. Mitchell showed me what real martial arts is, not just skill, but wisdom. The admission hung in the air, and the students exchanged glances, some nodding in respect, others still processing the shift in their instructor. Lavra inclined her head, acknowledging his words. Admitting you're wrong takes more strength than fighting, Daniel. Your students will remember that more than any technique you teach. The room felt lighter, as if a storm had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. Emma's tears spilled over, and she hugged her mother tightly, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Laura squeezed her back, her heart full, but her mind lingered on Sarah, whose loss had driven her to this quiet life. She'd fought today, not for herself, but for Emma, for the students, for the principle that respect matters more than ego. Daniel stepped back, adjusting his GI, his movements slower, more thoughtful. He looked at Laura with a mix of gratitude and humility. "Thank you," he said simply, and for the first time, his voice carried sincerity. The students began to disperse, some approaching Laura with shy smiles, others still scrolling through their phones, watching clips of her past victories. A mother approached, her voice soft. "You're an inspiration, Laura. Thank you for showing us what strength looks like." Lavra smiled, deflecting the praise. "I'm just a mom who loves her daughter." As she and Emma gathered their things, the dojo buzzed with a new energy, a sense of lessons learned beyond the mats. Daniel lingered, watching his students with a newfound resolve to teach differently, to lead with empathy rather than arrogance. Lavra felt the weight of her past settle, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the strength she carried quietly. She glanced at Emma, whose smile was brighter than ever, and knew this moment would shape her daughter's path as much as it had reshaped Daniel's. Lavra Mitchell and Emma walked out of Rising Sun Martial Arts Academy into the cool evening air, the dojo's fluorescent glow fading behind them as they crossed the parking lot to their weathered hatchback. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding that tonight had changed something fundamental. Laura's heart felt full yet heavy, her mind replaying the moments on the mat, not the effortless dodges or the judo throw that humbled Daniel Harper, but the look in Emma's eyes, a mix of pride and newfound strength that made every sacrifice worthwhile. Emma, clutching her gym bag, glanced at her mother, her voice soft but curious. "Why didn't you ever tell me about Laura Kim?" "About who you were?" Laura paused by the car, keys in hand, her gaze drifting to the stars peeking through the suburban sky. "Because that part of my life belonged to someone else, sweetheart. I wanted to be your mom, not a champion." She unlocked the car, and they slid inside, the familiar creak of the seats grounding them. As Laura started the engine, Emma pressed on, her voice gentle but insistent. "But you were amazing back there. You could have kept fighting, kept winning. Why walk away?" Laura's hands tightened briefly on the steering wheel, her thoughts pulling her back to Sarah, her best friend whose laughter once filled training halls, whose life ended too soon because of a storm and a late-night drive. "I lost someone I loved, Emma," she said quietly, her voice steady but laced with an old ache. "Sarah was my sparring partner, my best friend. She died because she was helping me prepare for a fight. I couldn't carry that guilt and keep stepping into the ring." Emma's eyes softened, and she reached for her mother's hand, her touch warm and grounding. The drive home was quiet, the hum of the engine blending with the weight of Laura's confession. At their small house, they sat at the kitchen table over a simple dinner of pasta and salad, the glow of a single lamp casting soft shadows. Emma twirled her fork, her mind still on the dojo. "You fought for me tonight, didn't you? To show Daniel he was wrong about us." Laura smiled, her heart swelling. "I fought for you, for those kids, for the idea that strength isn't about showing off. It's about standing up when it matters." Emma nodded, her expression thoughtful, as if she were piecing together a new understanding of her mother. Later, as Laura watched Emma practice a new kata in their cramped living room, her daughter's movement sharp and confident, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Emma's kicks echoed the discipline Laura had once lived by, but they carried a joy that Laura's own training had lost after Sarah's death. Back at the dojo, Daniel sat alone on the mats, the academy empty, the silence amplifying his thoughts. He replayed Laura's words: control, not strength, wisdom, not ego, and felt a shift within himself. He'd built his reputation on fear and results, but tonight he'd seen what true mastery looked like. Pulling out a notebook, he began, jotting ideas for new classes, ones that would teach humility alongside technique, respect alongside power. The next day, a teenage student posted a video clip of Laura's spar online, captioned, "Never judge a book by its cover." Comments poured in, people sharing stories of underestimated heroes, of quiet strength revealed in unexpected moments. The post spread, reaching martial arts forums where old fans of Laura Kim recognized her, their messages filled with awe and gratitude. "The Shadow Blade is back," one wrote. Though Laura would never see it, she'd sworn off that life for good. At home, Emma scrolled through the comments, reading them aloud to Laura, who shook her head with a wry smile. "Let them have their stories," she said. "I've got you, and that's enough." Emma hugged her, and Laura felt the weight of her past settle into something softer, a reminder that her strength had always been for others, not herself. Days later, Daniel called, his voice hesitant but sincere, inviting Laura to guest teach a class on defensive techniques. She declined politely, suggesting he focus on his students' hearts as much as their skills. "You've got a chance to be a real teacher now," she told him. "Don't waste it." Daniel hung up, inspired, and rewrote, his lesson plans, starting with an apology to his class. Laura and Emma continued their routine. The dojo, a place of growth for Emma, a quiet refuge for Laura. As Emma practiced, Laura sat on the couch, sketching a logo for a client, her pencil moving with the same precision she'd shown on the mat. The world might buzz with stories of her past, but here, in this small house, she was simply mom, strong, steady, and whole.